Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive into the fascinating world of business English. And today we're doing something a little different. We're going behind the scenes of a real-world sales meeting to uncover the secrets of how native speakers really talk shop. Buckle up, because it's a wild ride of jargon, power dynamics, and maybe even a little bit of office drama.
Oh, I love it when things get a little spicy. It's those real-life situations where you can really see the nuances of language in action.
Exactly. So let's paint a picture for our listeners. Imagine a team under pressure to boost their company's performance. They're in a high-stakes sales meeting. And the boss is not messing around. He wants solutions, and he wants them now.
Classic high-pressure scenario. You can almost feel the tension in the air.
Right. So let's drop right into the action and hear how things unfold. This is where it gets interesting.
I'm all ears.
Okay, so the boss kicks things off with a pretty direct statement. He says they need to drive sales. Now, that's a phrase you hear all the time in business, but what does it actually mean?
Well, on the surface, it means to increase sales, to boost those numbers. But it's also about taking action, being proactive, not just sitting around and hoping for the best.
So it's not just about the numbers themselves. It's about the energy, the drive, the hustle behind them.
Exactly. And you can hear that in the boss's tone. He's not just stating a fact, he's issuing a challenge.
I like that. Like drive sales is a verb disguised as a noun.
Haha, I like that way of putting it.
So how does the team respond to this call to action? Well, one of the team members, Roger, points out a key challenge. He says their company is the most expensive in the market. Now, what does that tell us about their situation?
Well, in the market basically means their specific industry or sector. So Roger is highlighting that they're priced higher than their competitors.
So that's why they're struggling to drive sales. Customers are probably going for the cheaper options.
Exactly. And that puts even more pressure on the team to come up with creative solutions.
Okay, so let's hear what Roger proposes, because his idea gets a pretty strong reaction from the boss.
Oh, this is the part I've been waiting for.
Haha, I know, right? All right, here goes. Roger suggests they lower their prices to match the competitors. Seems like a logical solution, right?
On the surface, yeah, it makes sense. But remember, we're talking about the nuances of language here. And the way the boss reacts reveals a lot about the company culture.
Ooh, spill the tea.
The boss basically explodes. He says lowering prices is not very creative. And then he drops a bombshell. He says, it'll never fly with Swan.
Whoa, who's Swan? And why is the boss so worried about his reaction?
That's the million-dollar question. Swan is most likely someone with a lot of authority, maybe the CEO, and the phrase, it'll never fly with Swan, tells us that Swan has a reputation for disliking certain ideas.
So even before Swan enters the picture, his presence is already shaping the conversation.
It's like an invisible force field.
I wonder if that stifles creativity within the team. Everyone seems afraid to suggest anything that might displease Swan.
It definitely creates a sense of caution, doesn't it? It's a classic example of how unspoken hierarchies can influence communication in the workplace.
It's fascinating how much is going on beneath the surface of a seemingly simple conversation. All right, so Roger's idea is out. Let's see if anyone else dares to step up and offer a solution. The tension is building.
Especially with Swan about to arrive.
Oh yeah, Swan's looming arrival is like a dark cloud hanging over the meeting. But before we jump into that, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll see how Swan's arrival completely changes the dynamics.
Can't wait. Okay, so we left off with the team scrambling for ideas, and Swan, the big boss, about to make his grand entrance. Let's see what happens when he joins the party.
This is where things get really interesting, because Swan's arrival completely shifts the power dynamics of the meeting.
Yeah, get ready for some serious office politics in action.
All right, hit it.
Okay, so Swan walks in and immediately the atmosphere changes. You can hear it in everyone's voices. They're suddenly super attentive, even a little nervous.
It's like the air gets thicker.
Exactly. And then Natalie, remember her, she hesitantly suggests a promotion. Something like a 2-for-1 offer.
The idea that the boss shot down is terrible.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, let's hear how this plays out.
Well, Swan actually seems to like the idea. He says, I kind of like the sound of that. And you can practically hear the boss doing a mental backflip.
Oh no, here we go.
The boss jumps in and says, yeah, exactly. That's just what I was thinking. He even calls it a brilliant idea.
Wow, talk about a sudden change of heart.
This, my friend, is a perfect example of what I call idea ownership.
Idea ownership. I've never heard of that before.
It's a fascinating phenomenon that happens all the time in workplaces. It's basically when someone with higher status takes an existing idea and presents it as their own.
So even though Natalie was the one who came up with the promotion,
Swan gets the credit because he's the CEO.
and the boss is just trying to save face and align himself with Swan.
Bingo. He's playing the game of office politics. And Natalie is unfortunately caught in the crossfire.
It's amazing how much is going on beneath the surface of a seemingly simple conversation. It's like everyone is speaking in code.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand the nuances of business English. It's not just about the words themselves. It's about understanding the context, the unspoken rules, and the power dynamics at play.
So how can someone like Natalie, who might not be at the top of the food chain, make sure their ideas get recognized and aren't just stolen by others?
That's a great question. And there are definitely strategies you can use. One effective technique is to subtly reiterate your idea throughout the conversation. Link it to key goals or metrics. For instance, Natalie could have added something like, a 2-for-1 promotion could really help us drive sales by attracting price-sensitive customers.
Ah, so it's about framing the idea in a way that resonates with the decision makers.
Exactly. You're not just throwing out an idea into the void, you're actively shaping how it's perceived.
I like that. It's like planting a seed and then nurturing it so that it grows and flourishes.
Another technique is to document your ideas, whether it's in an email, a memo, or even just a personal note. This creates a paper trail. So if someone tries to take credit later, you have evidence to back you up.
That's smart. It's like creating a safety net for your ideas.
Exactly. It's all about being proactive and strategic with your communication, especially in environments where power dynamics can come into play.
This is so eye-opening. I'm realizing how much I can learn from observing the language used in real-world business situations.
Absolutely. It's like a whole new world opens up when you start paying attention to these subtleties.
So we've analyzed the drama of this sales meeting, uncovered the sneaky tactic of idea ownership, and even learned some strategies for protecting our own contributions. But let's shift gears now and talk about how we can use this dialogue to improve our own English fluency.
Sounds good to me.
Let's dive into some practical takeaways.
Okay, let's do it.
So we've been talking about this intense sales meeting and all the drama that unfolded, but it's got me thinking about the bigger picture here. What are the qualities of a good manager versus a toxic one? That boss's behavior wasn't exactly a shining example of leadership.
You're right. There's a huge difference between a boss who motivates and inspires their team and one who creates a toxic work environment.
So what are some red flags to watch out for?
Well, a toxic boss often relies on fear and intimidation to get results. They might shut down ideas without really considering them, belittle their team's suggestions, and even take credit for other people's work.
Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah, that boss we heard in the dialogue was a classic example.
He was constantly putting his team down
Yeah.
and creating this atmosphere of anxiety and pressure.
Exactly. And that kind of behavior can have a really negative impact on people's morale and productivity.
It's no wonder the team was struggling to come up with ideas. They were probably too afraid to speak up or take risks.
Exactly. In a healthy work environment, people should feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas, even if they're not perfect or fully formed.
It's about creating a space where people can brainstorm and collaborate without feeling judged or ridiculed.
And a good manager recognizes and values their team's contributions. They give credit where credit is due.
Not like that boss who was quick to steal Natalie's idea.
Right. A good manager is a facilitator, a mentor, and a cheerleader for their team.
They create an environment where everyone feels empowered to do their best work.
Absolutely. And that ultimately leads to better results for everyone.
It makes you wonder what Swan, the CEO, would think if he knew what was really going on in that meeting.
It's a good question. Maybe this kind of behavior is actually encouraged within the company culture. Or maybe Swan is completely unaware of how his managers are treating their teams.
It's a reminder that we all have a responsibility to speak up against toxic behavior, whether we're the boss, a colleague, or even just an observer.
You're right. We can't just sit back and let these things happen.
It's about creating a more positive and supportive work environment for everyone.
And that starts with recognizing the signs of a toxic boss and taking steps to address the issue.
This has been such an insightful conversation. We've gone from analyzing a sales meeting to exploring the dynamics of leadership and workplace culture.
And we've even touched on the importance of speaking up against toxic behavior.
It just goes to show how much we can learn from real-world examples of business English in action.
Exactly. It's not just about memorizing vocabulary and grammar rules. It's about understanding how language is used in different contexts and how it can impact our professional lives.
So to all our listeners out there, pay attention to the language you hear in your own workplaces. Observe the dynamics between people. And don't be afraid to speak up if you see something that doesn't feel right.
You have a voice, and it deserves to be heard.
On that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed this journey into the fascinating world of business English.
And remember, mastering business English is an ongoing process, so keep listening, keep practicing, and keep exploring.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the nuances of language. Until then, happy learning, everyone.